Hello, it's Lromanosky from Calgary, Canada, and I'm shooting from the Lugnuts facility, where we always have a bunch of interesting cars. The one in front of me is a Jaguar, of course, E-type, 1973 Series 3 V12. So they would have, I won't go into too much detail about the E-type, but it debuted to great fanfare in 1961 and was produced all the way up until 1974. This is the final iteration with the V12 engine. So this is a car that was entrusted to me to subcontract the restoration. So about a 4-year project. And the car is now for sale. So we'll do this video and we'll show some photographs of how it was found, and then photos of the restoration in progress at the various, it went for metal work, and then it went for paint work, and then we did the assembly and some of the mechanical work, the interior went in, et cetera, and there was quite a bit of time when we were fine-tuning it as well. So we'll go through those steps in the video. We'll show you photographs of the exterior. We'll do a walk around. We'll spend some time in the engine bay. We'll spend some time underneath the car, and then we'll finish it up with a driving video. So the whole video might take an hour or so, and we'll go through it. We'll go through it top to bottom. So it's broken into sections. So if you just wanted to skip ahead to the driving video, you can do that as well. Okay, and so with that, we'll start off with a little bit of the history on the Jaguar E-type. Okay, so the Jaguar E-type is an iconic car. It's been well described in lots of places. There's better places than me for the detailed history of the marque. But suffice to say, it was announced with great fanfare in 1961. Prototypes were driven to, I think it was the Geneva Auto Show in 1961. There were a couple of prototypes that were driven from England to make this show, a coupe and a roadster. And the car was sensational in that it offered, incredible performance for the money. It was about a third the price of a Ferrari or a Maserati, and equaled the performance, and it was really beautiful. Okay, so the E-type went through a couple of iterations. It struggled to meet North American lighting and bumper regulations. It had some issues with cooling. The first transmission was a little bit tough to use. The interior was a little bit cramped. So as they got through the production, they would have scalloped out the floor and made a little bit more room. They would have increased the size of the aperture in the bonnet for better cooling. They would have added electric fans. They would have got rid of the covered headlights to meet North American regulations. The ride height was increased. It was etc. It went to a Series 2, which there's an example of a Series 2 on the lift there. And then, but the emissions were strangled, and it would have been down from maybe 240 horsepower or so to probably under 200 with the twin Strombergs, which had replaced the SUs, and then they decided that they needed to bring back the performance of the earlier Jags, which were near 150 mile an hour cars. It might have been closer to 135, but anyway. And so then they came out with a fantastic V12 engine, which they put in the sedans. The V12 was done by Wally Hassan and Harry Munday, who had a long history in British car motorsports. Hassan did a couple of specials for W.O. Bentley. Munday was involved in the original Jag XK engine, but also, if I've got my names and places right and so on, also worked with ERA and with the BRM V16 engine. So these are very seasoned race car engineers. Munday started with Jaguar and then went to Coventry Climax, did the FWE series, which Colin Chapman picked up, put in the Lotus Elite, and the BRM F1 cars. So really seasoned, practical British racing car engineers did the V12. its origins would have started with 2 of the twin-cam 6s. They had a 4-cam V12, which they put in their XJ13 experimental car. That engine was a little bit too complicated and a little bit too wide with the 4 cams. And so they came out with a version with a single overhead cam per bank and a very simplified head arrangement where the head was perfectly flat. So they wound up taking a V12 racing engine, adapting it for production, but doing an excellent job of it, not only in terms of power output, flexibility, top-end performance, but also manufacturing as well. So it was a really brilliant job. There's a link to the video, I think, of Monday and Hassan describing the new V12 engine, which we'll put a link to. It's really interesting. It powered production-based race cars like the E-type and the XJS, and also the Le Mans prototypes, and it won Le Mans. So it's an absolutely fantastic engine. You know, it brought back the performance of the E-type, and they sold quite a lot of them. It's not as much as a sports car as the Series 2. It's more of a Grand Tourer, but it's a fantastic engine. Okay, so that's where we get to with the Series 3 E-type. It was based. The engine was bigger, and so it's based on the 2+2. So there's more room in the cockpit, and the doors are longer. Okay, and it also has, you know, fender flares. So the car is a little bit bigger, a little bit longer, more room in the cockpit, more power, more flexibility, but more of a grand touring car as well. The V12 engine was quite a bit heavier. It needed power steering, so that's a difference. But it's a you know, a fabulous Jaguar. You know, one of the iconic versions of the E-type, the last in production, perhaps the easiest to live with every day. There was an automatic and a 4-speed manual, and this is the 4-speed manual. About this car in particular, it started life in this color. This is Greensand with an olive interior. It was, according to the Jaguar Heritage Trust, it was the first V12 E-type to have the Greensand and the olive interior. So it's a unique color combination. I know we had a bunch of discussions with the owner because it was blue when we found it, and we found the original paint in the trunk and stuff, and we decided to bring it back to this period color Greensand, and I think it's fabulous on this car. I know there's lots of E-types that are, you know, metallic blue and so on, but most of the V12 E-types were brown in the 70s, and sable they called it. And I think, you know, the period color really sets it off. I liked it so much that I painted my Land Rover the same color. So I really think that the color is fabulous. And this car was bought new at Cook Motors, which was the Jaguar dealer at the time in Calgary on Centre Street. And it went to a physician in Medicine Hat who later set up a foundation to build housing for underprivileged and seniors and people that needed housing. So he had a very, you know, very well-respected physician who did a lot of great things in the community, and built up this foundation, which is going today. Today, you can see, you know, there's several buildings in Calgary with his name on it. So he passed maybe 10 years ago or so, and it wound up going into his daughter and son-in-law's care, and then to me. Okay, so we found the car in this parkade. It had an inch of dust over it. Critically, the car wasn't rusty. There was a few localized spots of rust where the car had drain tubes which had been plugged, and the drain tubes would have been in the trunk, and because they were plugged, water had run in the bottom of the fender and rusted it there. And also the same thing in the fuel cap, and we can bring the camera over here. there was, you can see the drain tube in there, and that had also been plugged, and then this was rusty. And so, actually there was another part here, if you want to bring it over, where there is, again, just because the drain tubes were blocked, some water pooled in this area, and there was a little bit of bubbling there. But the rest of the car was totally rust-free. It had never been apart, and so when we got it, what that means is we didn't have to address the floors, we didn't have to address the sills, and critically, we didn't have to address the door fit. So this car still, if we get a shot of the gaps that are around all the doors and the bonnet and so on, they're all factory. And often when you see E-types that are restored or other British cars, you know, the doors just don't fit very well, because you've taken, you know, you've cut out the floors or rebuilt the sills, taken out the engine, the whole body is sort of torqued and twisted, you put it all back together and it just doesn't fit. Often, you know, you take the car apart, take the engine out of it, and then do all the body and paint work, and then you do all the body and paint work and you put the mechanical stuff back in, and you find out that the, you know, 700 or 800 pound engine has now in the chassis has caused the chassis to flex, and now what you had for perfect gaps without an engine when the car wasn't painted, well, now all the gaps are all wonky, and you're not going to do anything about it because you've already put the engine back in the car and you just live with it. So the advantage to you know, starting with a car that's never been rusted is that you can paint it and you can take the engine out of it and you can put it back together, but as long as you don't touch the sills and the floors and so on, you still get the factory gaps. And it's extremely difficult to restore a body on an E-type because it's like a monocoque chassis. It's a monocoque in the center, and to restore it, and they rust easily, and then to put it back together and get the factory gaps. So that is a key differentiator of this E-type compared to other cars that have had more invasive bodywork. It only had a couple of localized places where it was rusty, and we didn't have to affect the structure of the car or the integrity of the car or any of the, and none of the body gaps changed, okay? So the first thing we did with this car is it went to a guy I know, Lyle, from Rods and Restos. He builds hot rods, basically, like builds, you know, he'll you know, build a complete body of a car. Like, so he's really an artisan, and we got him to do it, and we were very pleased with the result. So that's who did the metal work on the car. And next, I took it to Cosmos Collision, who again, all these contacts, well, they mostly came from my 8 years at Porsche, and Cosmos was the authorized body shop for Porsche in Calgary. So then Cosmos did the paint, and we took great care to match it. We had we had the sample from the rear, and we, you know, sprayed out many cards and so on, and we got the paint right. So then Cosmos disassembled the car, and then they painted it. Then next, it went to XJ Auto. It was still running by this guy named Asit, who worked at Cook Motors, the same place this car was bought from, I guess who had started in the 80s, and he would have like PDI'd all the new Jags from I think the mid 80s, and then after Cook Motors he went on his own. He's been an independent Jag, he has an independent Jag service shop called XJ Automotive, where he services Jaguars. So he was the guy I knew, because we did have some British cars that I sold him or sent him at Porsche, and so he was the guy who then put it back together and took apart the engine. We left the block with the pistons in it because it was still in good shape. The car had about 70,000 miles, and he had the heads rebuilt and so on, and put it back together. Okay, so then the car went to XJ Automotive to a sit, and he looked after just putting the car back together and rebuilding the engine, gearbox, all the mechanical stuff, all the brakes. So he did all the, you know, the big mechanical pieces of the car. And he knows the cars inside out. He's worked on them basically his entire adult life. And then it got sent to CR Techniques, and Jamie was the guy there, and he did all my interior work. Well, he's done all my interior work for 20 years for me. And he put the interior in. Now, I bought the kit from Worldwide Upholstery, and they didn't sell all of leather, by the way, and so we had to get the all of leather matched and re-dyed, and they didn't sell all of vinyl. They had beige vinyl and black vinyl, but they didn't make enough all of cars, the all of vinyl into production. So I think I either would have had to buy like some 50 meters or something like that of a roll of all of vinyl. And so we just decided to take all the places that would have had all of vinyl in the Jag and do it with leather. So we just had a couple extra hides re-dyed to match the seats. And where Jaguar, one of the reasons Jaguar could sell the cars for less money is Bill Lyons was quite frugal and knew that where to put the money on the car. So, you know, he would have spent money on the engine bay to make it look nice. He would have faced all the seats with leather, but then used vinyl for the sills and the back of the seats and so on. So for this car, we actually got a full leather interior, including the sills and door cards and the backs of the seats, sort of like what Aston Martin or Bentley would have done. Okay. So Jamie at CR Techniques did the interior, and then it came back here to Lugnuts, and we had a couple of Jaguar experts, then sort of fine-tune the car, and actually it did require quite a bit of fine-tuning to get it to work properly, so that took a while, and the owner was quite patient about it. So we finished up that work last year, and did a few more things to it this year, and it's running beautifully. Okay, so that's the history of how this E-type came to be. So now we have it, 65,000 miles on the car. We did some sympathetic upgrades to it, which we can go through, and you know, we didn't scrimp on the car. The customer had infinite patience and a bottomless bank account, which are two qualities that you need when you're restoring cars. Thankfully, he had both. And so, you know, whenever there was a question of should we do it this way or this way, it was always just do it the right way, do it the expensive way, and that was true, you know, throughout the build. So let's open it up and have a look at some of the stuff we did to it. Okay, well, let's poke around here. Maybe Aiden go on the other side here, and we'll show you some of the things that we did on this car. First of all, you'll notice that there's 4 SUs. This car would have come with Stromberg carburetors and kind of elaborate, long, thin air cleaners, and a whole bunch of heat shielding, and then a bunch of vacuum tubes and air hoses and stuff like that for the emissions. And so we removed that whole carburetor setup and replaced it with the 4 SUs with the pancake style air filters, which I think look a whole lot better. If we look at the front of the radiator, we can see that's a brand new aluminum sort of racing type radiator with twin electric fans and an electric header tank. And that replaced the extremely heavy steel radiator that was in the cars. And we know these cars can suffer from cooling problems. There's just not a lot of room under the bonnet here, and not a very big opening for the air to get in. So this is the best money can buy aluminum radiator for the car. Okay. Then it's got a for the starter we had the high torque, high capacity starter. It was a little bit different than the stock one, so we put one of those in, and brand new alternator, all the distributor cap, and well, the whole distributor, the coils, the water pump, all that stuff was new. All the hoses are all top of the line silicone hoses. If you can look at the headers, the really heavy cast iron headers, there's 4 parts to those. Can we see the headers in there? You can't see too much. So those were taken out and replaced with stainless steel exhaust and stainless steel headers. Anything that could be replaced really was replaced. The brakes were sent to White Post, and the brake booster was rebuilt, and the brakes were all either new components or rebuilt by White Post. This had steel wheels on it, but they were replaced with wires, and we got Michelin XWX tires for it. So those are super expensive. I think they're like $500 US a tire. We bought 5 of them, and then converted it to wires, and there's I think 72 spoke wires. The supplier we used for most of this was SC Parts Group, and they would have sourced, they're mostly a clearinghouse for parts, but we went through them and then have all the invoices for that. So under the hood, we've got, just to summarize that, we've got the heads were taken off, and they were all dipped and then replaned, and then all the heads were rebuilt. So we did that, the radiator, all the electrical pieces, all the ancillary components on the front, converted it to 4 SUs, took the exhaust off, and put stainless exhaust and stainless headers on the car. The bonnet all came apart, and each piece was painted individually, and that's important because rust gets in, all of these pieces. The car, we'll show some pictures, but it was stripped right to the tub. The subframe was pulled off. It was painted separately. All new hardware was purchased. That fuel tank was taken out, acid dipped, coated, and put back in. And again, new fuel pumps. Anything that was like a consumable or a wear item was replaced from the best suppliers that we could find. If you want to come over here, we can look in the engine, or in the interior, and we can also see that we've got leather on the sills, and leather on the entire seat facing. The top of the dash was restored. We bought a new clock for it. We have a Jaguar Heritage head unit, so that's got nav and Bluetooth and so on. We redid the sound system in the car. Underneath the floor mats, we have it Dynamat. We have the Dynamat covering. I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of glued down with a layer of felt. So everything, like I said, we didn't scrimp on anything. Of course, the top is new, and any piece or any switch that needed to be replaced was needed. I think we must have bills for. I'll go through the documentation later, but at least $50,000 worth of parts on this car. All new door lock hardware, mirrors, like anything that was even just a little bit worn or look a little bit aged, we replaced on the car. Okay, in the trunk, you know, all the lining is new. You know, the wooden boards and so forth. There's a brand new spare, and we bought 5 wires and 5 new Michelin XWX tires for that. So all the lights are new, all the gaskets are new, all the rubber is new. We did convert it to the European style front bumper, so we can show you that as well. And on the front, so it's got the simpler sort of European style front bumperettes, and that is, they're a lot smaller than the North American versions. The headlights, all the headlight trim, again, all the gaskets, the lenses, all that is new as well. I believe we kept the original wipers. Yeah, at least the wiper arms, because I don't think you can get them in silver anymore. So we kept those. All the trim for the windscreen, all of that is new. The chrome trim on the sides of the doors, again, is all new. And we'll go through that parts list, and I can show you everything that we did to the car. I also have a spreadsheet going of all the expenses and all the work that was done. Let's go. We can look at what the car looks like underneath, and then we can go look through all these restoration documents, and then we can, after that, we'll do the driving video on the car. So here we see the Series 3 E-type up on the lift. We can see the new stainless exhaust system and the stainless steel headers. The floor pans were all in perfect shape, and they were just undercoated. The square section engine cradle and subframe and hood support was removed and painted separately. Here we see details of the front suspension, which was all completely disassembled and rebushed and so forth. And we see details of the front suspension, upper and lower A-arms in the correct finish, the bottom of the aluminum race type radiator, ductwork for the front wheel arches, details of the sills and showing some of the panel gaps with the bonnet and the doors, the stainless exhaust, and we see the details of the rear suspension. So that whole subframe was dropped off and completely rebuilt and finished in dark black. More details of the wheel arches and rear exhaust of the car and some of the rear panels, lights, bumpers, etc. The car has about 1,000 miles on it since the restoration. Okay, so now we'll do a cold start and driving test on the 1973 E-type. We have this and the 61 Rover together. I now think we should sell these as a pair. But one thing at a time. Let's get the driving test on this done. So what we'll do is I'll get Aidan to photograph the exhaust, and we'll start it up from cold. Actually, this car hasn't been started for, what, a week or something like that? Something like that. So it hasn't run in a week. We'll pull out the choke fully. We'll start the car. We'll let it settle down into an idle. We'll open up the bonnet and we'll listen to the engine. Look for noises from any of the valve train or the ancillary components. We'll look at the pressures and so on the instrument cluster, and then we'll take it for a drive, and I'll show you what this 1973 Jaguar E-type is all about on the road. Okay, so let's get in. I'll actually take the mic off and give it to Aidan so you can hear the exhaust start, or the exhaust note, and maybe I'll just clip it to the license plate here. All right, so I'm gonna go start the car. Aidan's gonna see what comes out of the exhaust, and then we'll open the bonnet for you. Okay, so this, like I said, this car hasn't been started in well over a week. We can see that it's got 60 psi of oil pressure and that the battery is charging. We can see the water temperature is stone cold, and we have some gas, and the light from the choke is on. So if I release this, maybe we'll give it another couple minutes to warm up. These V12s do like lots of choke when they start from cold. And let's just go and look at the front of the engine now. Handbrake is on. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So it idles pretty sweetly. We don't hear any abnormal, engine noises, valve train noises, ancillary noises at all. The idle is steady. It'll fall, and when it warms up, of course, the oil thins out, and you get a bit less oil pressure at idle. I don't think I've ever seen it go below 20 psi when it's hot. We're running the Castrol Classic 20W50 non-synthetic engine oil in the car. So it's actually behaving itself really nicely. All the carbs are in adjustment. We've gone through it when we built it and bolted everything together. There was quite a long period of fine-tuning, just going through all the adjustments and redoing the timing and redoing the carbs and redoing basically everything. We had an issue with the brand new SUs, and they had some O-rings in them that were cracking, we think, from methanol. So those caused us quite a bit of grief. And we wound up basically going through like every system in the car, trying to locate a problem that was in fact an internal one in the SUs. And so we replaced the O-rings with an ethanol compatible rubber, and then now it's perfect. So anyway, the car runs and drives really sweetly. So we'll close the bonnet and get in and go for a drive. We'll be nice to it for a little while until we get it up to full operating temperature. But this V12 really pulls hard, very smooth, and it's a lovely engine, as V12s mostly are. Okay, so we've been running for, I don't know, 3 minutes or so, 4 minutes. We can see the oil pressure's fallen from the 60 psi when it was cold. It's about, I don't know, 15, 16 degrees Celsius here right now. Battery's charging. We see we have some water temperature. The oil probably isn't fully up to temperature yet. We can play around with, I guess we were at 900 RPM there with some choke. So it likes its choke, so you can't take it off too soon. Let's go for a little bit of a drive. We're in an industrial area in Calgary here. A nice scenic road is some distance away, so forgive me for just taking it around this area here at Lugnuts, but you'll get an idea as to how the car drives. We'll try not to get anything dumped on us from that guy. So just about every system in this E-type has been disassembled and completely rebuilt. I would say without regard to cost. The owner was not that price sensitive. The only things we left were the things that there was just no real advantage to taking apart. And the gearbox internals, we didn't take the gearbox apart, although it has a new clutch and release bearing and so on. And the bottom end of the engine was okay, good compression and so forth. So we left that. The heads were rebuilt, and of course new head gaskets and other all the ancillary components that distributor and starter and alternator and radiator and ignition system, all that stuff was renewed. Just the bottom end and the gearbox. Everything else in this car is basically new. And the engine, it really revs cleanly. You know, there's no flat spots in the engine, and like as you'd expect from a large displacement V12, the engine's very linear. The big displacement gives it a lot of torque low down, and the smaller cylinders give it lighter reciprocating mass, which lets it rev higher. So you get kind of the both of best worlds. You get a torquey engine that also likes to rev, and the V12 is inherently in a 60-degree formation, inherently well balanced or perfectly balanced. So it really is. There's a reason why all the most expensive cars, the luxury cars and sports cars and race cars, have used the V12 configuration. There really is kind of like a mechanical jewel of an engine, and the Jaguar, is one of the best. I mean, it really is designed. I think I've went through this in other places in the video, but designed by Harry Munday and Walter Hassan, who, both were, very experienced British racing car mechanics. Who go back to W.O. Bentley and the ERA and BRM V16 and so on. So it's a proper job. I mean, they really did a nice job. And it's just so, so wonderfully smooth and powerful. Okay, the rest of the car, I mean, it stops well. Not a lot of play in, either the brake or the clutch, and the car stops straight. We can see now it's idling at around 600 RPM or so, and it's completely happy. It took a while to nail everything down and get everything to work together, and fine-tune the car, because we did change the carbs and all the ignition system and stuff like that. So it did take a while, and there was an extended period where we were fine-tuning the car. And but that is over, and for the last whatever year or something like that, this car has really behaved itself. It's a lovely thing to drive. It doesn't overheat. It's got a really large high capacity radiator and twin electric fans. They're thermostatically controlled, and even in this car lived in Medicine Hat, which is I think one of, if not the hottest areas in Canada, and even on plus 35 degrees Celsius days, the car never overheated. Now this is a very poor road, and yet the suspension is still compliant, and the ride's still comfortable, and the body frame feels still like for an open-top British roadster from the 70s at least, feels rigid and solid, and the car feels, it feels robust, tight, and it feels like it wants to rev, absolutely forever, and even by today's standards, it's quite a fast car. It steers, brakes, accelerates, idles, starts, all very nicely. We didn't do the gearbox internals, but the synchros in the gearbox are excellent. So we just didn't need to touch that. Before it was restored, it was a driver, and I put about, I think, probably close to 500 miles on the car before it was taken apart, just to sort of really identify those areas that needed to be replaced and so on, and all the problems, and know, it, it, it was a good car then, and it's still a good car. It's just a lot shinier. So the whole process of, I mean, I think the restoration in this commenced in, I think, 2016, and the costs have ballooned so much after COVID, and restoring, you know, any car is just a massive undertaking. There's probably 2,000 hours in this car total. So you multiply that by as much as $200 an hour, and you just get a staggering bill now. So this car was done when, you know, you could get a lot of that work done for half the amount of money, and a lot of the suppliers that I used, you know, don't even take any work anymore. Like they literally say, I'm booked up for the rest of my career, and there aren't a whole bunch of young people to take their place. So getting, you know, a car like this done again would be extremely expensive. And then, you know, the restoration process on any car, you know, isn't easy. They don't always behave themselves. They don't always go together the way you think that they should. And there's always problems. So embarking on a restoration for a car like this, you know, is a long, expensive process, and it's a rewarding process as well. But it's not without its frustrations, and then the bills now are astronomical. So, you know, everybody will tell you when you're shopping for an old car to get one that's restored. And so this is an example of that. The car, we will, by buying this car, we will be saving you. You'll be paying 50 cents on the dollar, and we'll be saving you 2 or 3 years, and a lot of heartache. You know, it's not easy to do this. So with that, anyway, we can demonstrate that this car runs and drives really nicely, and you know, thanks for viewing.